Do I have a motion to amend the agenda?
So moved.
I have a first by Mr. Lawrence, a second by Mr. Guines. All in favor? 7-0.
To the consent agenda, we're removing 5F, resolution declaring real property to be surplus, and to adding 5AA, resolution authorizing entry into bus stop occupancy agreement with FlixBus.
I move we accept the agenda as amended. Second.
All right, we have a first by Mr. Glavin, a second by Mr. Lawrence. Any discussion? All in favor? Seven zero. All right, we'll now move to our presentation agenda. Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President, and welcome everyone to our last meeting in May. And I guess welcome in summer in next month, and the final, I guess, opportunity to give everybody an update and a welcome to this area. If you're not from this area, this is to the TV land. You know, this is a great place to be. As far as business, I would ask Gerald Bussey to come in and introduce or give us a progress report on what's going on with Bonnie Carey and some of the things that happened a couple of years ago. Right, Gerald?
There you
go. Thank you. I'm here with Robert Weigel to give you all an update on the Mississippi Sound Coalition's litigation against the Corps of Engineers and the Mississippi River Commission, which you and the coalition authorized in late 2019 after the terrible Bonnie Carey spillway algae bloom and so forth. And also to give you an update and talk a little bit about strategy going forward. As you know, the coalition is composed of virtually everybody in Harrison County, well, literally everyone, every local government except Gulfport in this litigation, and all of Hancock County in litigation. Jackson County is not in the litigation. But we've been very active in that. And I'm not going to steal Robert's thunder. I do want to say that Robert has done an outstanding job, and he's got some good news to report to you in the litigation. The other good news is that we are gaining some allies in our effort, and a major ally in Louisiana is Lieutenant Governor Billy Nungesser, who had a hearing in Baton Rouge a couple of weeks ago. And I want to congratulate and thank Councilman Kenny Glavin, who represented the coalition there, along with the tourism community, which of course has suffered greatly from the algae bloom. As it turned out, on that same day, Robert and I were involved in the deposition in Vicksburg of the Corps of Engineers, which the federal court finally made them do the deposition, and the Mississippi River Commission. So he's got more to report to you on that. But thanks again, Kenny, and I'm sure that we're hoping that there'll be many more such occasions. Lieutenant Governor Nungesser is, of course, is totally concerned, as we are, about the Mid-Barataria diversion and the Mid-Breton Sound diversion, both of which are in the stages of doing an environmental impact statement. We principally Robert drafted letters of opposition to their ongoing EIS and recommending that the Mississippi Sound be included in those environmental impact statements, and also to look at the pollution coming down the river, not just how much water. And so those are two big steps. As it turns out, Louisiana, got the lion's share of the Restore Act money, and they have allocated $2 billion of their money just to the Mid-Barataria diversion. So think about that, and they have many more billions to go. They've spent about $100 million on engineering and consultants so far for these two diversion projects. This has, of course, a relationship to the Bonnie Carey, but it just shows you the ongoing pressure to move ahead with construction and developments without taking into account the Mississippi Sound, which is, we think, just doesn't make sense, of course. So we have also, you recall, y'all endorsed, and so did Harrison County Board of Supervisors and the Hancock County and the rest of Harrison County, the Mississippi Sound and Lake Pontchartrain Protection Act, and that's what I just passed out to you. January, a year ago in 2020, or shortly before the COVID shutdowns, y'all passed a resolution asking our delegation in D.C. To introduce that act. And that act basically does the following things. It if it were passed, which it hadn't even been introduced yet, if it were passed, it would require the Corps and the Mississippi River Commission to consult the local governments of the Mississippi coast before they open the Bonnet-Carré spillway. Now, that may not sound like much, but right now, by law, they got to consult Louisiana, but they don't have to consult Mississippi local governments. In fact, they don't have to even consult the state government, although they tend to at the last minute. The other thing is, this Mississippi Sound Protection Act would require an environmental impact statement on the Bonnet-Carré spillway before they open it again. That is, at least start it. The reason that's important is because the last one that was done on the Bonnet-Carré was in 1976, and a lot has changed since then. And as Robert will show you in the litigation, we've been making those points to the court. And the final thing this act does is does an audit of all the money that's flowing into the Corps and flowing into the Mississippi River Commission for all of these projects while excluding the state of Mississippi. And we think the audits will really highlight how dramatic that difference is. You've already passed a resolution, and what we want to do is, we've talked with the Harrison County a couple of weeks ago. Well, we, on your behalf, are going to go back to our congressional delegation through the mayor and your administration to ask our delegation, all 4 congressmen and the 2 senators, to introduce this act this time around. And we feel like we know we have allies from Billy Nungesser and others in Louisiana in the seafood and the tourism businesses. So we're going to be going forward with that, and we'll report back to you some more. We also think, and this was a suggestion at the county when the mayor and I and Robert were there a couple of weeks ago, the county board of supervisors have suggested we really ought to put a PR budget behind this coalition effort so that the public gets better informed about what is and isn't happening. And so we'll be coming back to you, the mayor's office, in the budget time to maybe allocate something along those lines. There's been some indication from the tourism community that they would help. And we've also had a volunteer from one of the casinos to do a fundraiser to put into a nonprofit fund like the Coast Community Foundation to do some of the PR to help pay for it. So we'll be coming back to you on that strategy. The one other thing that we'll also be coming back to you on is Mississippi law allows the creation of marine sanctuaries. It hasn't been used very often. In fact, it hasn't been used for the Mississippi Sound at all. But we'd like to present to you a proposal to create a sanctuary in the Mississippi Sound, at least north of the Intercoastal Waterway, and present that to the 2022 legislative session. So that's kind of on the radar screen, and what it would do is it would begin to protect by state law against the kind of pollution that's coming down the river as well as other locations. How effective that'll be against other states remains to be seen, but at least it'll be a step in that direction. So I'm going to yield the floor now to Robert Weigel, our chief counsel in the litigation. We'd be glad to answer questions after Robert finishes, or if you had some now, I'd be glad to, but I think you'll want to hear from Robert. It's been quite an effort over the last year. So Robert Weigel, if you'll come forward.
All right, thank you very much, Gerald. When Gerald introduces me, it's like being at my own funeral, you know, that he says so many nice things about me. So, Mr. President, council members, glad to be back here talking to you after a very long year for all of us. We have a lot to report. It's been a year, so let's start at the beginning, maybe with a refresher on what we have been doing in federal court here. So if y'all recall, a little over a year ago, we joined together with most of the other counties and municipalities on the coast and filed suit against the Corps of Engineers. It's under a statute called the National Environmental Policy Act. Some of you may be familiar with it. It's an important rule for federal agencies, and what it says, basically, is look before you leap, right? If you're gonna take an action that's gonna affect humans and the environment, then take a look at it, figure out what the effects are gonna be, and then, a really important part, how could you do that in a way that's gonna reduce those impacts? So, right, let's go back to 2011, 2016, 2018, 2019, 2019 most recently, right? We saw our beaches with hazardous algae blooms enclosed, our fisheries shut down, the oysters decimated, tourists leaving in droves. That's the kind of thing that National Environmental Policy Act process helps you with, right? Because they say, if you open the Bonnie Carey spillway, what's going to happen? And how can you make that better for people in Biloxi and on the Mississippi coast? That's why we want them to do that. So we've asked for two things in this lawsuit. We said, Judge, make them prepare an environmental impact statement that's going to do that. Look at all that stuff, figure out how you can make it better for people downstream here. And two, we've said, while you're doing that, we want you to consult with the local governments before you open that spillway, right? So look before you leap, talk to us, right? Talk to us about what you're doing and how we can make that better. Two critical things there. So for the past year, trying to get the Corps of Engineers to move forward with this has been like trying to get a mule to climb a ladder. It has been an absolute struggle to get anything out of them. But we have been successful in this. The judge has ordered them to give us documentation about the way they've operated the spillway, what their options are on operating the spillway, and the other aspects of that whole project, the Mississippi River and Tributaries project, that's a part of. And we even got to go and take a deposition of the Corps of Engineers, which is, to my knowledge, something that has never happened before in this context. Yeah, I know all of y'all have probably heard of or even dealt with the Corps of Engineers, but as administrations come and go in Washington and things change, the Corps is insulated from almost all of that. They have their own culture. They do not like to be questioned about things, and that was really true here. But we were able to do some very extensive discovery over the past year, and out of that, we got two big things that are important to us that we learned. They're going to be important to us in this lawsuit. They're important to us while we're talking to the Corps and telling the public about what we're doing as well. The first one is this: there are options out there to just opening the Bonnie Carey spillway, right? There are other places that they can send water, like down the Atchafalaya Basin through the Morganza spillway, and the Corps of Engineers has discretion to do that. Now, sometimes they'll tell you that they don't, but we know that they do. And the other thing that we know is that because of changes in the Mississippi River, the Bonnie Carey spillway is being operated differently. Now we know, all of us know, because we've seen it, it's being operated more frequently and for longer periods of time, that there are reasons that they're doing that, and among those are that there are deficient levees downstream that they have to protect, right? So we know these things, and these are things that can be worked with to lessen the impacts on people over here on the Mississippi coast. Now, where we are right now, we're about to send another round of briefs to the judge about this. We'll be filing those in the next 10 days, or a little bit less, actually. After that, we can expect, it's hard to say how quickly a judge will act. They will take the time they need to take, but I personally expect that we would hear something within the next couple of months. after that about whether the judge is going to let us stay in court. And I think if we do well on this motion, we can expect that we can do pretty well in the case as a whole. So it's been a long year. It has been a productive year for us. And we have learned a lot that's going to be useful to everybody here on the coast in dealing with the Bonnie Carey situation and in figuring out ways to make things better. Now, I do want to echo something that Gerald said. I think the single most important thing that could happen is getting that Mississippi Sound Lake Pontchartrain Protection Act into Congress and getting it into law, because that's going to do something very important. One, it's going to force the kind of reviews and provide a lot of funding for the kind of review that needs to happen, right? So we can understand the Bonnie Carey and how to protect our resources. And two, it would give Mississippi a seat on the Mississippi River Commission, which we don't have right now. We haven't had since probably the early 1970s is the last time that someone from Mississippi has been on the Mississippi River Commission. So that legislation is an absolutely critical element, really important to making sure that we get the kind of protection that we need for folks here. So look, Peter told me I had 5 minutes. I'm going to try to stick to my 5 minutes, but we're happy to answer any questions that you may have.
I'd like to make a few comments. Number one, in addition to the support you have locally here, the Mississippi Hotel and Lodging Association and all of its members are part of the Sound Coalition, and they have overwhelming support for anything that you need, including a supporting resolution if you're seeking some funds for some of the programs that you're doing.
Yeah.
On that meeting that was in Baton Rouge, it was overwhelming that the very parish that it was affecting, Plaquemines Parish for the Barrett area, they don't want it, and they're not listening. They are ramrodding this thing as quickly as they can, and it's really concerning to listen to these meetings, and they can stand up there with a straight face and say, we got billions of dollars for damage that we're going to damage mitigation, when before they even move an ounce of dirt or open anything or divert any polluted water, they already know that it's going to cause at least billions of dollars in damage. And listen, we applaud your efforts, Mr. Biloxi, and yourself for representing this, and it looks like you are making progress, and you'll have our overwhelming support. You can bet on that.
Yeah. Councilman, if I can thank you for mentioning that our tourism businesses are in this coalition and supporting and participating in the litigation as well. And I don't want to forget Mississippi Commercial Fisheries United, who are also a plaintiff in that and supporting us.
I have a question for you. Does Mississippi have the same strength as Louisiana right now as far as the voting?
I'm sorry, Councilman, I couldn't quite.
I said, is Mississippi has the same strength as Louisiana in voting, putting these things together? Are we have the same amount of people that can offset anything they do, or they got more people in Louisiana to offset what we do?
Oh, you're talking on the Mississippi River Commission? Is that what you're thinking
Louisiana.
about?
Yeah, just political strength and ears. I think we're on the weak side. Although in
Well,
Plaquemines,
that is, yes. In terms of Congress, yes, we do. But we've really got to get our folks engaged first. Mr. Biloxi was saying, we presented that legislation, and of course that happened just as the COVID situation sucked all the oxygen out of the room at most levels. But I think we got to revisit that and get our folks in Washington re-engaged.
let me comment on Councilman Glavin. We got a few Croatian allies in that Plaquemines area too, so
Yeah.
they can swing a little weight. No, but it's a battle for us, and to do the right thing, we have a bigger challenge of anybody. We just don't seem to get the consideration that's, especially after the past 2 years, and that year was in particularly bad too, as far as Bonnie Carey.
The other question is, we lost a lot when they opened up the Bonnie Carey, the spillway. It affected tourism, affected the oyster bed, affected a lot. Is there any way we can recoup the money that we lost?
Yeah, I wish that I could tell you that there was a straightforward path for doing that, Councilman. We looked at that very carefully over the last couple of years, and there are just very significant hurdles to that.
I mean, you know, that's not good for us. We lost a lot of jobs, a lot of people that put out of work. It affected Biloxi, the coast a lot. You know,
No,
so
you
we're a
are-
big tourist town down there. I know it affected Louisiana also, but still, we lost a lot. It's hard to recoup that. Those things were shut down. Just flat killed all the oysters, you know? That's a ton of money that we lost. Taxes, business-wise, people eating them, whatever. But I mean, I was just wondering, they gotta have some kind of recourse when they do anything that affects people's lives and businesses. And there's something that should be paid back to those cities and states.
Yeah. Unfortunately, in federal law, there is a provision that does knock out the chance for most kinds of damages from operation of flood control projects like this.
Well, federal law or not, I mean, it affects a lot of people. So the federal
Sure
law
does.
should be taking care of people, not hurting them.
Well, it does, and I can tell you one thing we've learned very clearly from the work that we've done over the past year, right? The Bonnie Carey Spillway is one part of a much larger system. The Mississippi River and Tributaries Project, it's got levees and backwater areas and other spillways and all that. The Bonnie Carey Spillway is the only part that gets used, right? So, you know, Lake Pontchartrain and the Mississippi Sound they're the ones that are carrying the load for essentially the rest of the United States on this.
The problem is that's the one that really affects us. So that's our concern. That's what we're trying to do, get on the table to make sure that we're taken care of. So,
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Gerald.
All right, thank you all very much,
Thank you very
folks.
much.
Good to be back.
Thank you.
I want to, yeah, I do. We have some representatives and guests from the Boys and Girls Club. Kiva, would you like to come up and kind of give us a little update on the progress we're making down here on our latest adventures? So.
Absolutely. Thank you all, to Council President, to our councilman, Ms. Guines, to the mayor, and everybody else. Thank you guys for having us and having it on the agenda that we go into the the old Head Start building and make it a new Boys and Girls Club. So I'm going to yield my time. We have our board members here, James Moody and Carlos Bell, and we have some children with us, and they would like to give words, but I wanted to just come up and say thank you.
Thanks, Kiva.
Hello, everyone. My name is Carlos Bell. I'm the board chairman for the Boys and Girls Club of the Gulf Coast. Just want to reiterate that the partnership that you guys have helped us establish and help us get into this building. There's a lot of moving parts with collaborations with the school district and the council members, Mr. Gines, Mayor Fofo. I think Chief Miller. This is just a lot of working parts, and we just really appreciate the opportunity that we were able to reach kids that need us the most in this opportunity, and to have a direct impact on day one when the Boys and Girls Club open. I feel like, my projection is that there'll be a 200 wait list when this club opens up with all the amenities that they'll have to builder space and maker space and sound studio, to give these children the opportunity to, think and dream outside of their own, surroundings and environment, that they can be whatever they want to in life, and that's a safe place to be. So we really appreciate it, and I would just continue to hope for that we continue to grow this partnership that we have with the Boys and Girls Club in the city of Biloxi. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not going to speak long. My name is James Moody. I am a corporate board member of the Boys and Girls Club of the Gulf Coast as well. And I did want to introduce Mr. Cordell and Ms. Kaylee. They're members of our East Biloxi unit. And I just can't thank you all enough for your support. Councilman Gines, Mayor Gillich, Mr. Leonard, Mr. Bye. Thank you all for y'all's hard work. We, I think, started this process several months ago at this point. So this is a really good day. And thank you all again for your support.
Great. Thank you so much. And it's been, we've kicked a lot of tires, right, Kiva, over a year or so. And we're appreciative of what's coming to fruition here. You want to say anything?
Thank you from
Okay.
the East Biloxi Boys and Girls Club.
All right, very good. Thank you. Thank you so much. I do. It's a great effort, Felix. And-
Mayor, if I could interrupt and
Sure.
take a little piece of your time also. And this has been a long time with Kiva, working with Kiva, Carlos Bell, knowing him from the port, James Moody, he was instrumental in helping us when he was working with Senator Cochran,
Yeah.
and always opened up doors for us when we went to DC to make sure we got the money for the infrastructure project and everything else. So thank you guys for all what you're doing. You're filling a deep hole in the city of Biloxi and a deep hole in Ward 2. So thank you guys again.
Great. Thank y'all again. And I think that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mayor. All right, we'll now move, we don't have any departmental reports. We'll now move to our council reports. Mr. Lawrence?
Yeah, a couple of things on the Porter Avenue in Forest. The cable company seem to be wrapping their cable around the telephone poles. Who do we have to contact for them to either remove it, take it down? I mean, I don't know who's the contact for the cable company. It seemed to be cable wire, it just. But I mean, you know. Yeah, I have some addresses and that, but well, I'll give that to you. I'll give it to you after the meeting. On Porter and Forest, yeah. So I don't know if it's just broken, it wraps around. It looked like they just cut it off, but they didn't. So it makes it look pretty trashy. You know, you expect them to do a little better job than that. Yeah, both of them. And I know we renting a Johnson building. Are we gonna build a 25, 30,000 square foot metal building somewhere on our property?
Couple of years we are. Okay, as well as for public safety or public works. As you know, we've got a lot of property on the point, but not built up high enough where, you know, the storm surge and everything get to. So that's our main goal, is figure out where we need to put it, and then we'll move forward with those buildings. Metal building, pretty much what's there, but this was the you know, the fastest and the best bang for the buck with regard to the amount of things we needed to store, and then provide you know, the Boys and Girls Club the opportunity to move it forward. So we're looking in 2 years to have a you know a total you know allocation of where these things need to go, but we're looking for 5,000 to 10,000 square feet of building that we'll build.
Well, you probably make sure you build it big enough, so make sure you throw all equipment, you know. So that's, I mean, that's just something we need to put, you know, like you said on the point, you have the problem with the hurricanes, because it does flood.
Yeah.
It's not, you know, down on the east end, it's pretty tough sometimes, the house stuff, because it floods for the hurricane.
Yeah.
When most time you're trying to put it up, so the higher land, the better. You remember, y'all went around Katrina, but they moved everything to Lee Street. Well, what flooded the worst? Lee Street, the ballpark and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Everything they had went under water, you know. They moved everything there. Then
Went all the way around it. But again, we're in the search mode there on where it needs to be placed.
And I talked to you before about you said you're going to talk to Dale Associates about looking at building kitchens behind the library like they did with the fields at Magnolia.
I'm due to connect with them on a couple of things that are on the radar with them, but we definitely would take a look at a possibility there. You know, we depending on them to give us some ideas on how we could operate what's there now, but it'll, I haven't done it yet, but it's certainly a good thought, and we'll investigate that.
Yeah, because the fields, they did a good job with the Magnolia Hotel, building that kitchen outside,
Yeah.
pretty much
A similar thing could be
separate,
done.
but right. But you can do
Without-
the same thing there with the 2 stories.
Right. Same conditions as far as historic, you know, we got to jump through a few hoops there.
And I talked to Mike and Sherry Bell about on Savara Park, they have that basketball goal that nobody uses. I was just wondering, is there any way we could look at taking that down and building a dog park in that area where the goal and everything was? That seemed to be the hottest thing in the world. People walking their dogs, they want dog parks. So I just think that'd probably be a good idea.
We can work pickleball into it
Pickleball
too.
and dogs. We win it. Pickleball's a big thing, you know. So but I just was wondering if y'all could look at that and take that down, it wouldn't take but probably a 3-foot fence around there. It'd be much anything. And how about Keystone Circle there? Peter, have you made any phone calls on Keystone Circle, Sweatman House? My regular routine here.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Hey,
The status is unchanged from last time. The folks said they were willing to give the property at Keystone Circle, but we have to wait till August when they control the property.
okay, and what about the Sweatman House? That was a good idea with the Sweatman. If that works out, that's pretty good.
Face-to-face meeting with the governor on the 2nd. Revisit, because I've asked him before what his thoughts were and what their departmental issues, their budgets. I'll get a report from him.
And another question, Peter, for you, was on the low-speed vehicles, is that electric and gasoline? Can they use either one of them on the streets?
Our resolution right now is electric only.
Well, how we add gasoline to it?
It'd be equivalent, gasoline horsepower too. Again, I think that's the proper thing to do.
Say that again?
Whatever, they're gasoline carts, golf carts, they all, pretty much fall into the same usage category. So if we need to change that to include, maybe we may have overlooked that, but a gasoline-powered golf cart should be doable too.
So we need to put that in there, Peter. You need to bring that to us. We have to amend that, just add that to it, make sure it's where they could use either one of them. 'Cause a lot of people own the gasolines already.
Yeah.
They want to just make sure they could use
We
it.
don't have a problem with that.
So what do we have to do to make it legal? Since you're the legal person over there.
Do you want me to propose an amendment to the existing ordinance? I will do that.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's see what else we got. Anything else? I want to ask Kenny, is the fireworks at 9 o'clock going to be every Friday at Margaritaville?
Is it what? Clarify that
Again?
Fireworks.
Fireworks,
Yeah,
9 o'clock,
every Friday.
every Friday. And they started last week.
Now, it's contingent on the weather, and we may have to move the coordinates depending on how the weather is blowing, or, is that right, Chief? We met with, our organization met with the chief, and I think all that is shipshape.
Okay, I'm surprised you didn't announce that last week. Because people call me and say, well, Kenny didn't say anything. Because you always usually bring those things up, like, that's good. Because all them kids coming in town for Memorial, that's going to be nice.
Every Friday night from now to Labor Day at least. Every Friday night.
Okay, now we have that video. You got that, Cecilia? Okay, make sure you got that one. Make sure it's playing where they know 9 o'clock, Margaritaville, right?
Margaritaville,
Okay.
every Friday night from now to Labor Day.
All right.
Be there or be square. That's right.
And thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. Mr. Guines?
Yes, I have about 3 things. Chief, do we have a date when we're going to start the inspections on the golf carts? Have a date yet? Peter? This week, okay. Okay, thank you. And next, I want to just thank Sherry Bell and Beverly Martin working together to get that asphalt down at Henry Beck Park for the basketball courts. So I appreciate all of us working together to make that happen. And the last thing I have, I'll get with Walt on those work orders. That completes my time.
Thank you, Mr. Guines. Ms. Newman?
I'd like to make a suggestion that before we approve or deny any more subdivisions in Woolmarket, that we do a study, so we can confirm if there's any true claims to people flooding that used to not flood. I would like to know before we go about approving any more.
Thank you. Mr. Deming?
Ms. Bell, we spoke earlier about the Pops Ferry playground. One thing I left off that list was restrooms. I think we used to have some porta potty systems out there that we no longer have, and some residents have been asking for their return. Also, Mike, you sent me an attachment this morning with 147 pages. I didn't have the opportunity to go through all of that. Can you just give me a rundown on that?
The attachment you're talking about, Councilman, is this council approved several traffic studies, one of which was the Atkinson Road traffic study. I sent the results of that to you and also Ward 3, as well as Representative Felser this morning. On one page, and I think I told you in the note, page 20, I think, there are recommendations. Essentially, we learned what we already knew, I think, and that is that regardless of how many houses are built on Dr. Bertucci's property, we're going to need a right-hand turning lane, and there's no reason why we shouldn't start now. Dr. Bertucci is apparently, I'm told, and Dennis Stiefel could confirm, that he's changed his mind again about how many houses he wants to build there, and is now thinking of a much less density, fewer, larger houses. So you know, one of the considerations in that study was how many houses were going to be added. So that's changing still. But despite that, the real outcome of this is that, and there is a whole series of data in that report, but that we need now to start moving on having a right-hand turn lane.
Right, so based off that contingency in it, I was gonna actually ask for an update on that Bertucci project, which you kind of gave a short one. I don't know if Jerry wants to expand on it, or even if Mr. Stiefel wants to expand on where we're at with that. And forgive me, I didn't know you were gonna be here. I know you're probably not prepared for this, so we'll keep that in mind also.
Please ready.
That's okay. Is this on? Is this on?
Yeah,
Just briefly, Dr. Bertucci, as Mike said, has changed his vision for that property. I've yet to talk to Ms. Newman about this, but we went through some rigorous pre-approval or meetings, public hearings, and things like that. The original plan was to do about 200 units on that property. We're down. He wants to do more of a legacy-type development with only about 12 lots, estate-type lots, high-end lots. With a large common area for the people, the 12 residents to share. Now, if you recall, there was a portion of that development up against Pops Ferry Road that was commercial, retail, possibly apartment, neighborhood residential type stuff. He still wants to do that after he does the subdivision. So with regard to the traffic study, as I understood, there's an existing problem now on Atkinson Road that's in need of some dedicated turn lanes to get prevent traffic from clogging up and backing up. That's still, I would suggest that we still do that, but the traffic is going to be significantly reduced coming off of Bertucci's subdivision in light of that. So if you have any questions.
I don't have anything other than what you.
It's a big change of plans, and it kind of blindsided us, but
I
that's.
expect there'll be some continued changes, and so I'll wait.
That's a high probability, but that's the direction we're headed right now.
So
Thank
what you're saying, you're going to have bigger lots and you're going to be upscale?
Yes, sir. He's looking at roughly 3/4 acre lots, and then a large, the whole piece of property is about 55 acres. And so he's looking at about a dozen lots. Of course, his home is on the water down there, and he wants to have a few acres to himself. But he's looking at about a dozen 3/4 acre, 1 acre lots. And then a large, probably 8 or 10 acre common area between the homes that they can share and all have access to the water. But they will still be connected to the retail commercial area along Pops Ferry Road that kind of fronts Pops Ferry Road Bridge area. And that traffic generated will still need to use the Atkinson Road access.
Yeah, so it's going to be about 3,300 square feet?
So,
that's 3/4 of an acre is roughly
33,000, correct.
square feet. I mean, that's a good
Roughly.
sized lot. That's a big difference. That's
It's a big difference.
good thing.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Dennis. Mr. Mayor, as I suggested in the last meeting, I do want an opportunity to have you and Mike ride through the ward with me. If you'll have some time, I'll have my people call your people, and we'll see if we can find some time.
We'll be ready.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Thank you, Mr. Deming. Mr. Tisdale?
Yes, thank you. There'll be a ribbon cutting Thursday at the Lopez School campus. Biloxi XL by 5 is dedicating some new playground equipment out there, and Biloxi XL by 5 prepares kids to enter kindergarten at the age of 5. It's a joint effort between the city of Biloxi and the school district, and of course XL by 5. So if you have a preschool child and you're available, or you just want to go play on the new playground equipment, Mayor,
And Ms. Hunt will be there for sure, right?
Ms. Hunt is everywhere, everywhere, I'm
What's the
telling you.
time? What time?
The,
11, okay.
11 o'clock Thursday. Be sure to get in your car on time. The Shuckers begin another homestand tonight through Sunday. So if you hadn't been to a Shucker game, go to a Shucker game. And also, before our next council meeting, the Memorial Day weekend, and Memorial Day will be upon us. Everybody have a safe Memorial Day weekend. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tisdale. Mr. Glavin?
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to start off, first of all, Mayor, congratulate you on a successful state of the city. It was good to see things getting back to normal, and we didn't have to wear masks, and we could hear you clearly, you know. And but it was great, and Jack, the fire dog, and the police dogs, and all that. You had a little fun with that. Those of you who missed it, it was a real treat for sure.
We're going to give Cecilia and Vincent all the credit there as far as those ideas. So they did a good job.
Great job, y'all. It was really good. Next, I just want to touch on, again, last meeting I talked about the Cedar Lake Bridge and opportunities we may have in the future. I was getting these alerts from the city that even though there was no rain, the high winds was pushing the river water over the roads, and we had to close Cedar Lake and stop that traffic. So it's just another indication of a high need in that area. The Marsh Master, I guess, I went out there. I got some photos of where they've been kind of scoping around, but I don't know of any progress report on that. If I could get a progress report at our next meeting, that would be great. I just noticed that they were there, but I couldn't tell of exactly what they were doing. And then Director Bell, I want to commend you. We had, to my knowledge, one of the first baseball tournaments at A.J. Holloway Sportsplex this year, and it was the Biloxi Classic tournament. It was well attended. I think it looked like it was well run. My grandson, the Croatian kid, was participating, and lo and behold, they took home the gold and won the entire thing. And I think that qualifies them now for a World Series here in Biloxi. Yeah, so good. I'm glad y'all are plugging into it. I think it's the Baseball Players Association that you're affiliated with that. And I went online, looked up that organization. It's a very well organization. It will give Biloxi a lot of exposure. And then last, I know I mentioned these in a lot of our meetings, but I'd like, when the opportunity presents itself, to close the meeting in memory of Ronnie Piritich, who passed away, colorful character, but well-loved nonetheless. And if we can do that, that would be excellent. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Glavin. I only have a couple things. Eagle Point Park coming along nicely. They finished pouring the last section of the basketball court today. And pickleball courts that has been poured. I think one of the pads for the pavilion has also been poured. Still, I'm starting to get a lot of calls on this, and I know I brought it up last week or possibly the meeting before that, but the grass and the ditches out on Pin Oak is just terrible. The contractor still hasn't got the silt fence. Those floating devices in the canal are still there. And it's really, I mean, the grass is, we're writing violations for people that have 12 inches of grass in their yard, and we have grass in this ditch that's 6 foot tall. And so it's sort of hard to, when somebody calls complaining about getting a citation, it's sort of hard to justify them getting a citation when we have grass that's 6 foot tall in a ditch on a road in a subdivision with 300 or 400 homes in it. And so whatever we have to do to get that done, we need to get that silt fence taken out and get those things out of the canal. Lastly, before that, Sherry, now that those are finished, I know that we already have the goals and everything. What's the time frame on getting those installed? stripe the courts. And do we know when that's going to happen? Okay, good deal. And then lastly, I would just like to give a little praise to Mike Hossley. He's our Director for Public Works out in Wool Market. And recently with all the rain, and it's been a job. And weekly, I'm meeting with him and looking at drainage issues and culverts that have been washed out and everything. And, you know, the area is so big, and he really, really does a great job. And so I'd like to commend him for the job that he does out there for us. And that concludes my report.
I'd like to, can I say one more thing? I want to bring this up. This is like a food for thought, put everybody's mind. I know we're receiving some COVID-19 money, it's a pretty good bit of money. I just want you, the mayor, and the city council to think about maybe, I know we've been giving stimulus checks to a lot of people all over the United States. I wonder if it's possible that we could do the same thing for the city's employees that have been here since 2019, that have been through 2 years, a lot of trouble, but they stay with the city. I just wondered legally, could we do something like that? Give them $1,500 stimulus check? You know, that.
Okay.
We don't know whether we can do that, but keep in mind and bear in mind, and everyone, you know, our analysis of where we've been, that COVID, that 5.5 million was directed by Treasury for, first of all, recovery of lost revenue. That has really kind of strengthened our position as far as things we might want to do with regard to using money, borrowing money, leveraging money. So that was really just a scratch of what we lost in this first batch of COVID, okay? So we absorbed that $6 to $7 million in lost revenue through last year's fund balance. This brings us up to, you know, where we can, our head above the water and breathing and considering. You know, our employees are top on our list. Let me say that, you know, and talk about Big Mike and the things that happen every day. And things are happening every day. So I'm here to say and tell everybody that our employees are on the top of the list. And we're going to do everything we can to make sure that they feel like the top, in both in appreciation and compensation. We're looking at every way. Councilman Tisdale and I have been looking at variations of how to organize things and reorganize things and help out. To give you an answer, we don't know whether we can do that or not, but it's all part of the ball game, all part of the analysis, and we will, with an effort in the next 2 or 3 months, figure out what can be done to take care of those folks.
And I just think it's something that we really need to look at strongly and make sure it gets done, because they stuck with us. A lot of people lost their employees. They just quit working. And most of the people stayed with the city and went through the fight that we did for the last 2 years. And I think anything we can do to help them, I just said 1,500, that's roughly about $1 million, you know, one shot time. I mean, I just think it's something that we ought to really look at, that's all. Thank you.
All right. That concludes our council reports. We'll now move to the public agenda. Citizens' comments. We'll have a total allotted time of 45 minutes. Each person that speaks will be given 3 minutes. When you come forward, if you will, please sign in at the table and state your name. Is anyone on my left side of the room that would like to speak? Please come forward and state your name and sign in, please.
Tracy Smith, Ward 2, Main Street. Mr. Mayor, I heard your State of the City address. I was impressed with your zeal and positivity, but the more you spoke, the less I understood, the less I could compare what's going on in my part of town with what you were talking about. And after a while, I was wondering what Biloxi you were talking about. I live over in Ward 2, north of the railroad tracks, and here are a few statistics that you and my councilman might not know about. There are 152 vacant lots in that 1.25 mile area. We have 3 whole blocks on Holly Street that have nothing on them 16 years after Katrina. There are 40 vacant residential structures, 24 vacant commercial spaces. There've only been 12 houses built in 16 years in my side of town. So the growth and everything that you spoke of at your meeting does not correlate to where I live at, you know? So my question to you and your august body here is, when will you guys devote some of your time and energy to helping residential and commercial property owners in East Biloxi solve some of their problems? So right now you have what, 200 vacant properties? That's 200 families that can be contributing to the tax base. That's 200 property owners who pay property taxes and don't know what to do with their property because we can't sell because the property values are too low. You don't want us to build. The city has been discouraging us to build because of flood elevations and all this other stuff. My question to you is, when will we get some sort of confirmation from you, some sort of plan from you, even some sort of acknowledgement about what we're going through over there? I never see you on my side of town. The only people I see is Mr. Tisdale and Mr. Gines, the rest of this august body. I never see them over on my side of town. So how can they have a sense of urgency to get done what we need to get done when nobody's over there? And when it's out of mind, it's out of sight, it's out of mind, in my opinion. Thank you.
This is not a question and answer, but, you know, let me just say that I'm on your side of town every day. So, and we'll be happy to discuss some of our plans and some of the things that you bring to the attention of the council. I'm happy to discuss with you at any time, personally, and I'll bring you up to date. So I appreciate you being here and being involved, and that's what it's going to take. We've had a lot of challenges since Katrina and what has been placed before us to handle. And so that's all I would like to say at this point in time. I'm happy to meet with you and bring you up to date.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Stifel, come forward.
My name is Dennis Stifel, and I just wanted to mention briefly that I'm here representing policy agenda item number A, in case you guys have any questions about that when it comes up on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anyone else on my left side of the room, your right side of the room that would like to speak? Okay, come forward. Please sign in and state your name.
Hi, my name is Sam Hasley. I'm from Biloxi, Wool Market area, actually Eagle Point. Glad y'all are gonna take care of the grass and the ditches. I'm glad the park's coming along well. I'm here, I have a project on agenda today. I'm wanting to open up a water taxi service in the city of Biloxi. I'm a 1,600-ton licensed unlimited oceans master captain. 8 years of maritime academy behind me. It's pretty simple, pretty laid out. I'm gonna run people back and forth to Deer Island from behind Point Cadet. And as it goes by and grows, hopefully it'll grow and do well. And I would like to start doing a route map into Back Bay, bringing people, tourists, locals, anybody that wishes to come, to restaurants and local businesses on the inside that don't get the business that the casinos get, or a lot of the bigger places on the beach from the casinos tourism. I would like to bring it into Back Bay, places like the Cantina, Cap Mal's, Yule's, Galot's. There's a lot of restaurants all the way from the dock and Gulfport all the way in. And hopefully it can grow into that eventually. And I appreciate y'all having me on the agenda today and letting me speak here. And I'd like to thank the mayor and Peter Abide and Mr. Creel and all the people that's helped steer me along the way. A few people that's not here, General Scraggins, the head of Marine Resources that I'm willing to work with hand in hand. And just that's all I have to say. And hopefully y'all respect and appreciate what I'm doing and help me any way y'all can.
Appreciate
Thank
your
y'all
time.
very much.
Thank you. All right, anyone else on the left side of the room? All right. All right. Anyone on the right side of the room? My right side, your left side, would like to speak? Anyone in the back of the room that would like to speak? All right. If not, citizens' comments are closed. We'll now move to our policy agenda.
Ordinance to approve a PDR residential master plan for Simon subdivision for property located at 4049 Lake Skillet Road.
This was moved last week by myself and Mr. Glavin. Mr. Krill, if you could, we briefly covered this last week. And originally, we were going to go forward with a public hearing because a lot of the residents in that area had requested that. And so please explain to us again the process of this and that, the part about if, once the study's in, we can do the public hearing. And then if it gets turned down or if the study comes back not supporting what's to be done, this PDR rolls off. It's not a rezone, it's just an overlay, correct?
Yes, sir. It is an overlay. It's not a zoning change. And if you vote to approve the PDR today, what that will do is that will free up Mr. Stiefel to go ahead and conduct an extensive engineering study of the 75 acres that's involved in this project. Once he completes that engineering study, then the application for the subdivision plat, the preliminary plat, would come back to the Planning Commission for a public hearing there. And if it's approved, or whether it's approved or whether it's denied, it would still come back to the City Council for a final vote. So no work would be done.
And then at that time, we would call for a public hearing before the council.
That's correct.
For the residents.
What happens before the Planning Commission is a public hearing, but the City Council always has the right to call an additional public hearing if they choose to do. What you're voting on today does not give them the right to go out and clear any property, to cut trees or anything like that. All it does is allows Dennis to do a study of the property and to bring that back in as a part of the preliminary plat.
And again, if the study doesn't come back to support that, or if it's turned down by the council when it comes back, then this PDR would roll off after a period of time and it would no longer apply.
Yes, what would happen is, let's just assume that the council votes to approve the PDR and then they approve the subdivision plat. Nothing happens for 2 years. After that 2-year period, the ordinance directs me to go in and have the overlay removed, and the zoning that's underneath the overlay would become effective again.
Okay, and then one other question, and this is for Mr. Stiefel, and I know this was brought up last week in regards to, and I don't know exactly where it's at, but I guess the large drainage structure that was put in place whenever the new road was put in there that isn't draining anything off. Are y'all going to study that, like, as to the coming off the property, why that's not draining and what we can do to correct that as well?
Yes, I believe you're talking about the bypass bridge that the Highway Department installed. We're going to survey that entire area there, take into account the existing elevations of the land. The idea with that bypass bridge, as you see frequently up and down the interstates, is when the main bridge floods, the water going through the main bridge floods to a certain level, it overflows into the bypass bridge. And what some of the comments we were hearing from one or two of the residents there was that that's not happening. The bridge is there, but evidently the ground elevation is too high to let the bypass bridge be effective. But we're surveying that area, in the bypass area. We are, even in our preliminary plans, we're limiting our development to above that bypass. So if there was ever a bypass canal, for example, dug through that bypass bridge, it would be able to be done with this subdivision. The subdivision would not impede that. There's plenty of acreage down on the south side that provides room for that avenue to be done in the future.
Okay, and then one last question. What kind of time frame are we looking at as far as getting the results back as to what this study?
We will probably have the study finished in probably 3, 4, 5 months, something along those lines. But the permitting, the required state and federal permitting, Corps of Engineers permitting, that type thing is probably, it's probably close to a year out.
Okay.
So we're not talking about breaking ground anytime soon, obviously.
All right, I appreciate your time. He's seconded, so let him go first. He seconded.
Okay.
I'd just like to make a few comments because I've studied this as it's been on the agenda for the first reading, getting to the second reading today. I appreciate Nathan Barrett's questioning. There's some good questioning, and if we can line this development up, as Mr. Stiefel just mentioned, and we get the drainage working properly, it helps that entire area, not just this development alone. And so that's what I'm excited about. And I would encourage my colleagues on the council, let this go forward. It's simply a study to see if we can put this in the right way with all the attributes that you want to see in a development. And if it's done the right way, I think everybody wins. So that's all I have.
Mr. Lawrence?
My question is back to you, is flooding is still a problem in Wall Market? I mean, how are we going to make sure this is done where it don't flood? You know, we've done a few of these things. They said we're going to take care of the flooding, and they didn't. So, I mean, that's your ward. So what do you want done here to make sure this is done? Making statements don't get it. We got to make sure it's done right. That way it don't flood that area.
This doesn't give anyone the go-ahead to build anything. All this does is allow them to do the study so that we can see what the results of that is, regardless of, you know, if they come back with the study and they come forward with plans, the study allows us to see what it says about the drainage in that area. And it's up to us at that point, when it goes through the planning commission to approve or deny their plans. And at that time, we will also, I've given my word to everyone in that area. I've had many calls and emails and stuff. I've given my word. We're going to do a public hearing so that we can hear just from more than just the developer. We're going to hear from the residents in that area as well.
Well, I just hope that,
Well, Councilman, let me jump in too, to go along those lines. You know, there's a book about this thick, and it's called The Wool Market Master Plan. We've identified at least the top 5 things, especially when it comes to drainage. You know, given there may be some opportunity with this next set of things, specifically the water, sewer, and we hope storm drain. And so we will be ready when that comes from DC. And as I was told by the MML as well as Secretary of State, that this was 1.5 billion allocated based on population, and comes directly. So if this 1.5 billion comes, there'll be a chunk of money, and we'll be able almost have shovel ready, but at least the description's been ready to push it. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mike. Be ready to push 5, 6, or whatever, you know, the cost will be. But storm drains and the wastewater is top on the deal. So we'll be ready. Again, this was a couple of years ago we did this master plan, right? I think, Dennis, you saw it before, but however we can implement it to handle the growth, given the money, we'll be ready.
Mayor, we need that Cedar Lake Bridge that new bridge so they can get over there safely.
No question. And Cedar Lake, not just the bridge, it's the whole
I agree.
question. That's right.
I agree.
Right, Mr. Tisdale?
Yeah, a concern of the residents in Wells Ferry, as it was pointed out, whenever it floods there, and that's several times a year, the residents move their vehicles out up to Highway 67. And I'm thinking this proposed development would be north of Wells Ferry, as I recall. Is there room on Lick Skillet for, and I know this is a premature question, I'm just curious, if the water rises there in this development, is there enough shoulder space on Lick Skillet Road for those residents to park along Lick Skillet? Is parking going to be studied anywhere in there due to flooding? Because that's what the current residents of Wells Ferry do. That just, it's not keeping me awake at night because I don't live out there, but if I did, it would keep me up some nights.
Well, on a typical subdivision, of course, the parking is always tied to the residences that are going to be built there. Now, I would assume that with the construction of the townhomes that are proposed for the corner of Lick Skillet and Wool Market and 67, that there would probably be parking lots in that area to support the townhomes. As far as having a separate parking area or a shoulder of the road, that would probably be a question that Dennis would have to answer as to whether or not they can incorporate that into the design. What I've seen of Lick Skillet Road, as you turn east there and you move to the east, it seems to be at the same level that Highway 67 is. It might drop at a location somewhere back over
Drops
there.
significantly, about a quarter of a way down the road, about at the end of this property. And whenever you have a heavy rain, that road all the way basically from the D'Iberville line in goes underwater about a foot or so. With not a terrible rain, but just one of the regular heavy rains that we have, that road goes underwater. So parking on that road, if the river floods, may not be an option either. The only option would be up on the highway or on the interstate.
The short answer to the question is that as far as the parking requirements of the land development ordinance, they would be tied to the number of residential structures.
Right, and I would think that this is not something that's typically included in a study like this, but it's kind of unique because with the current subdivision out there now, that's what these folks have to do, is they've got to move their vehicles. I don't know, Mr. Stifel, thanks.
Respond to that, Dennis.
I just wanted to interject one thing. Just there's a perception here that this subdivision here that we're discussing here, the Simon property, is essentially the same situation as the Wells Ferry, which is not exactly the case. It is in a flood zone. The Wells Ferry property, our preliminary numbers have indicated, is the elevation of the ground typically is about 7 or 8 there. The elevation of the ground on this subdivision is about 7 or 8 feet higher on average. So when you see the Wells Ferry cars coming out because the river's rising, that doesn't mean you're going to see 200 homes on this subdivision coming out to try to park on the highway. They're well above, and I would say probably close to 90-95% of these homes, the finished floors will be a foot or two above the flood zone, which is like 14, 15, 16 here. So you're going to have a very small percentage of these homes needing to move their cars to dry ground, as opposed to almost 100% in Wells Ferry. Most of this property is up around elevation 12, 13, 14, and there'll be some houses that some of the pads that will actually, all the pads will be required to be at slightly above, a couple of feet above the flood zone, which is, and the same thing is true with Wells Ferry, except for their parking areas where the cars are much lower, probably typically 7 or 8 feet lower than where these driveways and carports will be, garages. So it won't be the same magnitude of people needing to evacuate to higher ground or temporarily park their cars. There will be a few, because we have a handful of riverfront properties. So there'll be a few, but even the riverfront properties on this side, this is the opposite side of the river, which is the higher bank. And even the riverfront properties, the waterfront properties are close to 10, 12-foot elevation, which is 4 or 5 feet higher at least than Wells Ferry.
All right, thank you, Mr. Stife.
Okay.
All right, George?
The reason I brought that up, because the last 20 years, we've supposed to be solving the problem of the sand blowing on the beach. We haven't solved that problem either. So we've got to make sure these things are done somehow or another. And then when you do them and they flood the area anyway, it's not good for everybody else living around there. I mean, when the wind blows 30 miles an hour, the sand's coming off the beach. It filled up Highway 90. It's tough when they have so much on Highway 90. When the car can't even drive through there. They get stuck. That's a lot of sand. So, I mean, it's just a tough thing. By the Oak Street and that, we have all that Mississippi State set up there by the schooner. No, there wasn't one grain of sand come off the highway.
Staying there.
No, wasn't any. When they got to Lee Street, it started. So, I'm just saying that I know there's certain things they can do. I'm not a big fan of all that stuff on the beach, but if it stops it, You know, I always thought they should go back to the 9 steps, but that's always been my case. Anyway, that's something different. That's all. Thank you.
All right, any other questions? I have one more question for Mr. Stiefel. The street levels in the proposed development, will those also be, will that be elevated, or will that be, will it be below flood? What will the street levels in there?
Typically, the streets are going to be below the flood zone. We're going to be in a no net fill situation here. In other words, while some of the house pads will need to be elevated a little bit above where they are now, we want to make up for that. If you fill the whole site up, then you're potentially risking flooding, further flooding, the problem, or exacerbating the problem that the Wells Ferry folks have now and some of the other neighbors. But the streets will probably be cut down slightly, and it'll be anticipated that some of the streets will, in a major flood, when you had, I think one time the river got up to about 16 or 17, the streets would be underwater in the street. The houses would not be, whatever that flood was, but the streets, some of the streets are susceptible to flooding when that river overtops and comes in.
So, and typically, when would that happen, during a hurricane?
It'd be typically a 500-year storm, or 100, probably in excess of a 100-year storm. Maybe a hurricane event would be the case, or just a very unique rainstorm where the rain just comes and just camps out over the watershed area, the Judicabuff River. But yeah, it's when you have an extreme storm like that, the streets will go underwater because we can't fill the streets that high.
Okay. All right. All right, any other questions? Okay, so today we're voting just on the PDR so that they can do the study. I'll call for the question. All in favor? 7-0. We'll now move to the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Have a first by Mr. Lawrence. Was that Mr. Guines? Second by Mr. Guines?
Yes.
All right, discussion.
Yes, hotel. Hey, give me a sheet.
That's a,
Mr. Leonard, oh, excuse me, Mike, Mike.
you want to know about hotel or Mike?
Hotel, the first one, right.
Okay, on H, 5H, that's the resolution transferring all the property between, just for the record, between the Port Commission and the city of Biloxi. Peter can give you a little more background on why we're doing that now all these years later.
This is just to clarify some things that have come up lately with the Secretary of State about whether or not we even own these piers or not. These piers were all given to us by deed through the Port Commission in 2004. They've been filed in the land records. When we did it, we had several resolutions confirming all these transfers, but the deed itself has never been spread on the minutes, so we're just doing that now for clarification.
So that would clarify that we actually own all these, like we're supposed to. We should,
Right.
You know.
Not everybody can find the land records on the internet, so this would allow future government officials to look on the internet in our minutes and find that deed.
Your next question, Councilman, was 5M,
Second.
and I think it'd be easier to let the fire chief explain that to you.
Yes, so the current software that we use for all of our reporting and inventory, everything that we do in the fire department, our staffing levels are all done through this software program. Currently, it's Firehouse software. I came to the directors meeting a while back and explained that at the end of August, our contract with this company will be up. At that time, I explained to the mayor that the current software will be, I said it was coming to end of life, and he quickly corrected me and said it's unsupported, and that's the case. It will not be any longer supported. This company has developed a new software. So either way, we have to purchase a new software program. The one we are currently with, the prices were exorbitantly higher than the ones we've settled for. We've looked at 4 or 5 different companies, and we've settled with this company. We feel like it's a good fit. As it explained in the resolution, they're not even going to charge us for this program until after the first of the year. In other words, we will migrate between now and October, and they won't be charging us for the software. So it'll allow us to be able to do that without having to pay for 2 software programs.
So it's a good thing for the city and the fire
Great
department.
thing for the fire department, yes.
On Quebec, right? How about? You give me a look. You got
5Q.
Got to go by now.
You and I talked about this, Councilman. Unfortunately, you know, our project in the Point Cadet Marina West, the Restore Act project that we refer to, is funded from 4 different sources of money. It's a $5.7 million project, capital project. It's funded by $3 million worth of Restore Act money, $700,000 worth of Tidelands money, and the residual is port bond and port millage. We've already gotten started, even though the Restore Act money hasn't come to us yet. We've already gotten started with the design, and we've written 1 check for $25,000 and change, which has been reimbursed to us from the Tidelands money. Unfortunately, one of our state representatives, one of our state elected officials got involved in the Tidelands money and decided maybe we shouldn't, he didn't want Tidelands money to be spent on the dock system, only on the boardwalk. So we've had to separate those 2 parts of that project. It'd still be done as one contract, but the 2 different parts would be the boardwalk and then the dock, the floating docks. We'll just have to bill them separately. So in order to clean everything up, we had to give the $25,000 back to DMR and basically recode. We haven't lost any money. It's still $700,000 total. We just have to recode that one bill to our own Tidelands money and do the soft costs. Same with the Restore Act. The Restore Act is for construction only. Do the soft costs from our funding. So that's just a little sleight of hand here. We haven't lost any money. We haven't lost any money.
Yeah, we just straightened it out, basically. That's all you did. Good. On uniform and Victor and whiskey, this is for the chief.
Well, this is the one that you and I talked about that I thought would be a really good question for you to ask, because I don't know the answer to it, but the chief does, and I know he's dying to tell you.
What kind of vehicles are these?
Well, there's a variety of vehicles. We ordered vehicles actually at the end of last year, and you can't just go out and buy a police vehicle anymore. They have to build them when you order them. We ordered from Chevy, and Chevy is not going to be able to come through with the vehicles before this budget is up. We've waited now for several months for them. So we had to look around the state and just find what we could find. The ones that you see, the trucks, there seem to be, trucks are pretty plentiful right now, so we could get those. That's just a standard truck, like you would go buy yourself. The ones you see that say Police Interceptor, an Interceptor is a series of modifications that they make, like oversized radiator, bigger water pump, beefier suspension. Usually there's some changes in the exhaust, really just so the vehicle can run longer and stay cooler. So that's really all. When you say Interceptor, you're referring to just several things they put together as a package.
I thought maybe they'd be flying around, like you did the drones or something. We get these.
That's coming. That's coming.
Is that the next one?
Is that it, Councilman?
Then,
Chief, that Tesla will get to the package. Do you know?
Yeah, no Teslas. No.
I like that. And the last 2, this was strictly for Mike, Yankee and Zulu. We're doing all the alphabet there.
There's been a great deal of stuff in the media about our summer camp, as you know. You've been reading the sound-offs, which are, quite frankly, not very well written. In fact, we're going to run a summer camp, as you know, at 3 sites, 75 campers at each site, or a total of 225 campers. There are 19 staff positions that we have to run that camp. 3 of those staff positions require, by the Department of Health, require either a college degree or an associate degree and a year of experience, or 3 years of experience. So it's not true to say that these jobs require college degrees. That's only the case of the 3 key persons that run each camp, and the rest of the people only require a high school diploma. So we collect somewhere in the neighborhood of $90,000 in fees over the 6 weeks. It's 6 weeks, Jerry? 8 weeks, over the 8 weeks. That means essentially that's about $300 per week for a camper, or something like $10 a day for that camper to have experience a summer camp. We will collect fees almost identical to the amount of cost. The cost, we think, is somewhere in the neighborhood of $85,000 to $90,000. So we've got $90,000 worth of fees, $90,000 worth of costs. It's kind of a wash. That's where we stand. What you're doing today is you're allowing us to take $85,000 out of the general fund up front, and then, of course, those fees will be paid back into the general fund. So it ultimately will be about a wash.
The reason I brought that up, so you had just that reason right there, so you could explain to everybody, be on TV, that's not a moneymaker. It's strictly help 225 kids.
Right.
It's a good thing. We're not doing it to make a ton of money. It's something else we have to do, and that's all. It's a great program to do. So I want to make sure y'all explained it right. So now it's on TV. Thank you.
You're good.
That's it.
Mr. Guines?
Apple. You all right?
I have none.
Apple's okay.
Ms. Newman? Mr. Deming? All right.
We miss AA.
Mr. Tisdale?
Yes, just one item again. This relates to the old Head Start building, and I asked this question last time. Just want to be sure that we're in the city's in a defensible position so that we're not
Any kind of
requested to reimburse the federal government either for CDBG funds or some of the other, I think, drug enforcement dollars that.
I'll stake my reputation as a journalist on that.
That's what scares me sometimes, Mr. Mayor. But we're good on that. We're reasonably good on that, Mr. Abide.
Yeah, for the same reasons we stated last time. Nothing's changed since then.
Right. Okay. Thank you. That's it. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Glavin?
I'm good.
All right, I have nothing, so I'll call for the question. All in favor? 7-0. We'll now move to code enforcement hearings. Mr. Krill?
You didn't ask for, you have to ask for exceptions.
I'm sorry. Are there any exceptions?
No,
Everyone was just so.
Yeah, no exception.
You want to object to George? Okay. No exceptions. All right, code enforcement hearings.
Item A on the agenda, SC Brosh, 338 Oak Street. Also, item B on the agenda, these two properties are side by side. Stephen Carl Brosh Jr., 334 Oak Street. Both properties are still in violation.
All right, is there anyone here to speak on behalf or against
I know he did some stuff, Jerry. What else does he have to do? I know he had some problems with it, but he did start moving stuff around. So where's he with you that he needs to do something else?
Well, you can see that he has overgrowth there, but essentially what's happening, he's running a business out of the house. He's got all kinds of air conditioning equipment stored all over the property. You can see from the pictures that there's a lot of things that have not been removed since we brought it up the first time.
So my question to you is if we're gonna hire somebody to go move, what we gonna do with the stuff?
If the city council votes to approve it, it would still take us some time to go out and obtain bids from contractors to go in and clean it up. Typically, what happens is, once the council passes a resolution, the owner gets serious about it, and they will go out and remove a lot of the violations that are on the property. But if they don't, we still have that option of going in and cleaning it up and adding it back to the taxes.
Well, that's my question to you. If you're gonna go move the trails, then what are we gonna do with them?
I'm
'Cause
sorry.
you said you wanna move the trails, you wanna clean it up, so what are we gonna do with the stuff?
Whatever we remove from the property, anything that we remove from the property would be taken to the dump.
I mean, everybody knows that when you do that?
I mean, if it's obviously junk, yes, it goes to the
I
dump.
was wondering, because, I mean, that's a lot of stuff sitting in trailers.
Yes, sir.
So we're just gonna throw it away?
Now, typically what happens with vehicles that we remove from the property is that they'll be taken to a storage yard, to a vehicle storage yard, and they'll be placed there, and then the owner has the right to go back and pay the storage fees that are associated with however many days they're there, and he could reclaim them.
I don't seem like we go anywhere with all this stuff. We just always charging people more and more money, and yet nothing really done. I mean, I don't know, sometimes it's kind of scary to me when you just go take stuff off people's property, and you're gonna throw it away or store it. It's just costing us a bunch of money.
Well, we don't throw away anything unless it's obviously junk. You know, if it's broken building materials or things like that, like the apartment building that we took down last week, then when they demolished that building, everything there was obviously junk, so that was taken to a dump site and disposed of.
Case is closed, or both of these cases are closed. Did you ask for an extension?
Say
You
again?
didn't ask for another extension, correct?
Well, I like to see him do something about it, but I don't want us to get in
Too, Bob, before
the business of hauling all this stuff off, then we don't do anything with it, then cost us money. I mean, I don't see where we're accomplishing anything, but I mean, I like Jerry said, you can't just keep giving them extensions and then not doing anything.
He said.
You know, we gave him 30 days twice. So, I mean, we can go talk to him and just say, make sure you do something with this, otherwise they're gonna haul it off.
It's closed. I think we're closed. We're done.
All right, we'll now move to the routine agenda.
So moved.
All right, we have a first by Mr. Lawrence, second by Mr. Tisdale.
Popo, everybody left. How about the nickels coming in?
Over there, we got some chips.
Oh, there he is back there. I thought he was, I couldn't get past the first lawyer there, Biloxi, so I didn't even see him. All right, give us some good news here now.
All right, council. So May was, as far as money, we did very well with getting advances and reimbursements from MEMA related to Hurricane Katrina. Of course, we discussed previously about receiving the $3.19 million from MEMA. That was on May 5th. On Wednesday, May 19th, we received $1.44 million. And currently, we have another $1.76 million that's being developed by MEMA for an advance, so we can keep 60 days in advance, as my mayor likes to say.
One question, the $5 million that we paid out to clean up the debris in that, have we received anything on that $5 million?
I'm not over Hurricane Zeta. Mike Leonard would be the best one to address that.
2.9 has been approved, but not, we hadn't seen the chips yet.
It's been approved, but no money yet.
Not yet.
All right, thank you.
Any other discussion? All right, call for the question. All in favor? All right, do I have a motion?
I'd like to move that we adjourn in the memory of Ronnie Peritich.
We all
All
second
right,
that.
we'll all second that.
Yeah.
All in favor? Everyone?
George.
Give it to George.
Oh, good time was had by all.